So this morning we're going to come and look at some land which is in Legian near Seminyak in Bali. Now this land is 400 square meters and has been fallow for some time, so I'm not going to rummage around in the undergrowth because I'm sure there'll be lots of insects and creepy crawlies without my best interests at heart. Now the first thing to say is there's quite a tall building behind, probably goes up to the maximum height allowed in Bali of 15 meters away from the coast. And the site is approximately square, I would say, which is something to take note of. And it has neighbours who have built up, you can just see through the trees, who've built up to a second floor level. And indeed this is true on the other side of the street as well. If we go back into the alley, you can see that it's very quiet and not too much traffic, but it's a dead end at the end, and I'll talk about that a bit later. Also, I notice here there is something resembling probably what is a private temple here, and that is something to take note of as well. But in general, on the face of it, I think this looks like a contender, mostly because of the quietness of the land, and in fact actually we're only about 500 meters from the beach as the crow flies directly, a bit longer to walk. But let me just take you back up the alley as well. It's wide enough for a vehicle and a small truck, no problem about that. But you can see perhaps at the end, I'm not going to make the video longer than necessary, there is building work going on here with scaffolding in the street. Now if we were building right now, that would be a problem, so I may go and find out what exactly is going on there and how long it's going to last. So now back at the office, as it were, but it's actually my home, we can have a bit of a think about what we've just seen. And in reality, of course, you'd spend much longer at a land site like this, and you would go back several times, and certainly you would take some measurements and hopefully bring the landowner to the land to discuss any aspect that you want, like what it's been used for before and the kind of price they want and whether any negotiation is possible. But it's good to go and get the feel of a location and decide whether you like it or not. And I would say on the face of it, this one was quite nice, particularly there's a quiet area, no building going on around at the moment at least. A pretty street, and it's nearest the beach. Two potential negatives. There's a temple nearby. Now, in some circumstances, probably not in this case, because I believe that's a private temple in a family home. But if the temple is bigger, it can restrict what you can build nearby, and it won't necessarily be written down what you can and you can't do. It's really at the discretion of the temple authorities. So there's something to bear in mind if you're in the vicinity. Plus the fact that at times of year there will be music, and I know from that particular temple that it does play music from time to time. This isn't necessarily a negative at all, but you should be aware of it. Perhaps more significantly is the high wall behind. Now, Bali benefits from sun which is overhead largely, and Bali slips. The arc of the sun is roughly plus or minus 10 degrees, whether you're talking about the winter, the dry season, or the rainy season. So one doesn't have to think too much about block sun, but in this particular case we've got a very high wall, and that wall, if you look at the video, is already casting a shadow into the plot, and as we move from May into June, that shadow will get longer and then start to recede. And then around Christmas time, the opposite will be the case. The wall behind, which is actually the hotel, won't cast any shadow at all. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts with this, but you've got to. The reason you need to think about it is whether, for example, if the villa is going to be for your use, or you intend to rent it out as a holiday let, which some investors are keen to do. Then, if your villa pool gets no sun at all, the water will be a little bit cold, and that's something to bear in mind. And if you're selling a property,
to an investor, or you want to sell a property to an investor, they're very well versed in this when they go to site, and they will immediately look to see if the pool is going to get the sun for at least some of the day. So that's potentially a concern for this. Before we look at what this plot might be used for, and I'm going to use some very basic plans to outline a suggestion. The plans are actually not from this site, but I've adapted them to really just show a few principles. If you were going to build a big villa on this 400 square meter site, you probably wouldn't choose this site because of the wall to the rear. It would be rather daunting to have this very, very high wall as a backdrop to your villa and garden, quite apart from the sunlight issue. And in any case, it would cost you, let's say you had a 400 square meter site somewhere else and you only built one villa on it. That's going to cost you a lot of money. I think the approximate cost of this site was going to be in excess of $200,000 for 25 years, something of that ilk. The building of one villa, let's say, going to cost you $150,000. That's a conservative estimate, I think. And then you have other bills and sundries. You're probably looking at the best part of $400,000 to $450,000 for one villa. That's not cheap. And it is really the land prices that are forcing up the cost of these things, and building costs are rising too. And remember, you've only got that villa for 25 or 27 years before you have to start negotiating either an extension or to sell it or whatever. So the trend in particularly the populated parts of Bali is very much more towards putting more villas on a plot of land. Typically a villa being 100 square meter or 150 square meter, and building the villa to 2 stories, so 2 floors. And this is quite efficient in terms of leasehold, because when you acquire leasehold, you still pay land tax on the land you are leasing, and therefore building up rather than sideways is tax efficient way of doing things. So there's a definite trend you can see across the island of building up rather than sideways, but this does fly in the face of what traditionally has been regarded as a single-story villa with a pool and garden, and that's becoming an increasingly expensive thing to do, which is why you'll see developers in Bali who are producing maybe 40 or 50 villas. They are building small villas, sometimes very small villas, and offering them at quite a low price, some of them even at $100,000 for a 20-year lease. And this is really to sort of try and introduce affordability, because having very large area villas is really becoming quite expensive. You can still do it if you're prepared to move to an area where it is not very developed and therefore land prices are cheap. Okay, so let's move on to an example, and I'm going to switch the video and get onto my screen. So this is an example of one set of options with this particular plot, and that is that you squeeze 4 villas onto the site, so each villa will be approximately 100 square meters footprint, probably 150 square meters floor space in total, which is a reasonable amount of space for a 2-bedroom villa. Just to orientate you, this was the street that we walked down and then turned right into the plot of land. This is the wall behind, and the temple that we saw was round about here, and the dead end to the street was round about here. So the individual villas, I should say that there's a pathway up here, which is only for walking, to allow access to each of the villas. Each individual villa, pretty standard layout. There's a pool terrace area here, dining table, living room, kitchen underneath the stairs as they go up to the second floor. Second floor consists of 2 bedrooms and an ensuite bathroom on each bedroom, and the bedrooms overlooking the pool, but with no terraces because of not really enough space. This is fine, but I want to draw your attention to one problem here, which certainly didn't occur to me. It was my builder that took a rather long intake of breath and said building here is going to be problematic. And it really goes like this. You remember that the street is here and that there is a dead end here. The problem is that is twofold. That one is you cannot build the fourth villa here until after the others are completed. And the reason for that is you need this spare land for logistics. In other words, to store bricks, concrete, steel, and other paraphernalia. And you also need this area for the lorries that deliver this stuff to be able to turn around in a 3-point turn and then exit up this way up the street, because they can't turn anywhere down here. There's just not the space. And that means, in turn, that you build these 3 villas and then you're building the 4th one by hand. Now, there's 2 problems with that. One, it means that the construction is going to take twice as long as it might do on a different site. And then also, when you're using these villas, you're renting them or you want to sell them, there's going to be construction going on site of the 4th villa, which will need to be built without using any logistical land at all. And that construction will be going on whilst these villas are either sold or occupied, unless you're going to just hold them all off until the project is finished in 2 years. But you can see that might cost you a lot of money. You might be losing a year's rent on each villa. And the other thing to say is that when the villas are being used, the problem persists beyond building, because if you're going to rent the villas out and they're going to go on holiday lets, the taxis need to come down this road, but there isn't actually anywhere for them to turn, because it's a dead end here and they can't get out. And there's no longer a place here for them to turn around. And so you may be faced with a situation where the taxi drivers are refusing to come down this road, and you saw the length of it, so that your guests have got to get out the taxi at the top of the street and bring their suitcases down to the villa. Which they have to find, because they no longer have the taxi sat nav. So that's not an ideal situation, and that's something you can't easily solve, and it would go on for years and years and present you with some difficulties. So I have to say that I was sort of pretending earlier that we were visiting the site for the first time, but in fact this was a piece of land that we rejected a year ago. And I might mention that the land has been on sale for a year, and I know that other developers have been to look at it and in the end walked away. It isn't particularly expensive. It's about the average price for land around here. It's about 27 million per hour per year for leasehold. But 2 things, the logistic problems and a long build time of 2 years, whereas otherwise it would take 1 year. And also I know that one developer was very concerned about sunlight with the building behind. There is one positive of that. It's because that building behind is so high, you could legitimately build these 2 villas at the back to 3 stories, perhaps making them into 3-bedroom villas. And that may be attractive to some developer, but that looked like a project too far to us. And therefore, our decision was also swayed that another plot of land became available in a nearby, which had better access and had a better geometry for building. Okay, that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you very much.